know. Come on in, everybody. Grab a chair. We will get started in just a minute. Well, happy Thursday, everyone, and welcome to another SCORE Memphis webinar. My name is Gary Robinson, and I am the chapter chair of the Memphis chapter of SCORE. We are delighted you've chosen to spend part of your morning with us today. Today's webinar, as you know, is from our nonprofit series, and it's about becoming grant ready. But before I introduce our speaker, I wanted to tell you a bit about SCORE Memphis and the things we offer small business owners and those who are aspiring to open small businesses. You can see our previous recorded webinars by going to our website, score.org/Memphis, and clicking on local business education, and then on recorded webinars. And speaking of score.org/Memphis, you can go there for all your SCORE needs. SCORE has 226 chapters nationwide with 10,000 volunteers. As a nationwide nonprofit resource partner of the U.S. Small Business Administration, we offer a vast array of free resources on our website, a robust education program, and free confidential mentoring. You can go to score.org/Memphis to find answers to your business questions, to request a mentor, or to see and register for our upcoming webinars. We've got one more webinar this month. It'll be on September 27th. Next week, we'll take a look at TikTok. To register, go to the local business education tab on score.org/Memphis and look for local events. It's free, and even if you have a conflict in time, please register anyway. We record these Zoom sessions and send the link to the recording and to available slide decks to all our registrants. So on we go to today's webinar. As we start, I want to let you know that the session, as always, is conducted in the webinar format on Zoom, meaning attendees are muted to cut down on the ambient noise. If you have questions, please use the Q&A button at the bottom and type in your question. Periodically, we'll stop and ask the questions that we will ask the questions that you've asked, and our speaker will answer them. So when you have something you want to ask, please use the Q&A button and type it in. Cheryl Smith is here with us again today. She is an American grant writer, nonprofit trainer, and consultant. She's been in the nonprofit industry for more than 25 years and is the CEO of Dewlyn Nonprofit Services. She helps more than 3,000 nonprofit organizations build sustainability through training, coaching, and grant writing. Cheryl is also the author of the book, 21 Ways to Fund a Nonprofit. She's a member of the American Grant Writers Association, a nonprofit trainer for SCORE chapters across the U.S., as well as a guest speaker for many public, private, and faith-based organizations. Broadly, Cheryl's specialty is building capacity in people and organizations and helping them to reach their highest and best potential. She's done a wonderful job teaching SCORE clients about nonprofits, and we are so happy she's back with us. Cheryl, you are a member of the SCORE Memphis family. We are so glad you are here today. How are you?
Thank you. Thank you. I'm doing amazing. Thank you so much for having me. This is always my joy, one of my very favorite things to do. So I always look forward to it, especially spending time with the Memphis family. So thank you for having me. And thank you guys for showing up this morning. This is going to be really good. This isn't one of those presentations that will last hours and hours. I think we can get through our content pretty quickly, and I cannot wait to answer your questions. I want this to be a discussion. Today is about you. You've shown up for a reason, and I want to make sure that you get what you came here for. If it's off topic questions, like there's something that we are not discussing today, but you just really want an answer to, still ask it when we get to the end of our session. I want to come back to your off topic questions to make sure you get those answers that you're looking for. All righty. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get started with our presentation for today. And we're talking about becoming grant ready, getting ready to receive grants out there. Grants are the second largest source of funding for the nonprofit community, and we want you to get your share of that. I usually include this slide about me. Gary did an amazing job introducing me, but that way when you look back, you'll remember that you were in good hands. You're in the right place. If you are a small nonprofit 501c3 organization, you haven't fulfilled your funding goals yet, you want to mitigate denials. You've applied for funding, just hasn't been as successful as you have anticipated or wanted. And you want to learn something new. You're ready to take some action. Inevitably, I'm going to talk about things you already know. But my hope is that there are going to be some juicy nuggets in here, maybe some things you didn't know that you can now use to move your missions forward. Okay. Our discussion, we're going to talk about 4 areas. We're going to talk about what it means to be on par with your grant pursuit, what it means to be above par, proactive, and productive. And I know I'm just tossing these words around, but they are important. And we'll talk about what each means, because so many folks think that it's so easy to become a nonprofit founder and start an organization and just go pick your money off the money tree. If it were that easy, I assure you, everybody would be doing it. It isn't. So it does require your planning and your attention. In many cases, your full attention. And so there's more required of you. Sometimes we cross the first threshold of becoming a nonprofit corporation at our state level, and we think, yeah, we're almost there. And then we become tax determined. We receive our IRS 501c3 and we think we have made it, but there is so much more required of you. This sector is different. There's so many gray areas, so many other areas or things that you've got to know that's lurking behind the shadows that's just not always glaringly, visible. And so hopefully we're going to uncover some of those things so that now, at least in your peripheral, we expand it so that you know what you can do to secure grants. Your strategy is something that's important to you for grants because it's not like checkers where it's a quick game. Grants are like chess. It's going to require some logic, planning, and thinking, tactics. And so we're going to talk about some of those tactics today. Our 4 levels, being on par, we're going to talk about what most people are out there doing, like the 501c3 designations there. They have a mission, they have a professional image and board and, volunteers. Some of you are above par already where you're compliant, you have a budget, you've started your financials, you're keeping track of those things. At some point, you'll get to this place, and some of you probably already are, but I would suspect if you're a new nonprofit, you probably aren't as proactive as you'd like to be. You probably are very busy, meaning that, oh my gosh, there's not enough hours in the day to take care of your agenda items, but wanting to make sure that you're actually being proactive, which is different. And then being productive, setting yourself up for those future activities that's going to really impact your long-term success. And let's just get started with being on par. That term we've all heard. We probably just use it flippantly, like, oh, well, they're on par with everybody else. It's been around for a very long time, since the 1600s. And it just means truly what we think it means, that we are equal to the next best thing, in our category. And so on par, in this case, if you're considering pursuing grants, you're on par if you do have your 501c3 status, if you've already applied for that tax determination and you've gotten your letter back, like you have it, it's not waiting in some IRS queue to be processed, you have it in hand. That's on par. If you have a mission statement, meaning you understand your North Star, you have your direction, it is set, you know how to articulate that pretty easily. It's your really quick elevator pitch. That's on par. Most organizations that get started have an idea of what they want to do. Most organizations also have board members and volunteers. When you complete your IRS application, chances are you answered and you told the IRS who was going to be participating in your organization, who was on your team, and then the professional image. Now, I want to spend a little time in this category. I will say that most nonprofits do have a measure of a professional image, but what we want to talk about is the kind of professional image that you really need when you're actually pursuing grant funding. And so you probably already have, say, a telephone number that somebody can call you on, right? You probably have an email address that somebody can reach you at. You probably have a location, even if you're operating out of your home. So you probably have some of these basic things. Maybe you have a website, maybe not, but it is an on par thing. This is not an extra added benefit to have a website. Websites are needed nowadays. People who are looking for you are looking for you online. And so you need to ask yourself, are you there? And are you there in a way that you can receive and it, these guests, whether the guests are clients that you're going to serve or whether your online guests are potential funders. And so if we hang out in this quadrant and we think about our image, I want you to picture anything you're interested in, right? Anything that you want to pay money for, anything that you want to give money to. I want you to picture in your mind something. Let's just picture, I'm going to picture a restaurant because I like food and I'm a little bit hungry this morning. So I'm going to picture a nice donut shop. Driving down the street, here's this shop. There's two of them side by side. I'm trying to decide which one I'm interested in. Well, one, I can't read the signage, okay? It doesn't look very clean. The rating outside says, maybe a C or a D. I can't find an owner. I call the number, nobody picks up, or better yet, somebody does pick up and they just go, hello. Okay. And then there's restaurant or donut shop B. It's beautiful. It's the colors that you expect donuts to be, right? Those pastels, and there's a picture of a yummy, delicious donut out front. Coffee is brewing. You can smell the coffee. You can boldly see their name, Donuts Are Us, outside. And you call the number to make sure they're opened, and they answer, thank you for calling Donuts Are Us. How may we help you? And so you can get it and you can imagine the difference. Now, which donut shop are you going to go to? They both sell donuts. They may even use the same recipe, but you're going to go to that shop that made you feel good, that looked like what you expected to see. It had the nostalgia of the coffee and the smell of the donuts baking. That's where you're going to go. And that's the same for a funder. And so there's over 6,000 new nonprofits being established every single month. Every month, you guys, I know it's over 2 million nonprofits that's registered and active, but right now the IRS says 1.8 million. And that's because they don't count grassroots. They don't count organizations that are churches or religious organizations that don't need to register. So there's a lot of you guys out there. So funders have their pick. And some of the questions I get so often, you guys, is, do I have to wait for my letter before I apply? I've already submitted it. IRS says I can apply. Do I have to do that? Yes, you should. You should do that. Same as the donut shop. Do I have to have a website? I just give Facebook, the Facebook handle? You could, but you should have a website. So I'm wanting you guys to picture what a funder is picturing. They've got many nonprofits to pick from. So are you a pickable nonprofit? Have you set yourself up so that your image is the type of image that a funder is expecting? And if not, you want to work on that. In terms of your mission statement, I know you told the IRS what you're going to be doing and they approved you, and thumbs up. I'm so glad. But now, beyond the IRS, because they don't have discretion. They don't. They have to follow their guidelines. But funders do have discretion. And so they get to act outside outside of guidelines to say, how does this feel to us? Is this a good risk? Is this a good bet? Do we think that we're going to have social return on our investment here? And so they get to deny you, right? And so your mission statement is everything. It's the first thing they ask you. It's the first thing that they see. It's probably the last thing they're going to remember. What does your mission statement say about you? Is it a statement that's paragraphs long that you've got to weed through all of these words just to figure out what you're doing? Or does it say something that's very concise and to the point in one sentence, 20 words or less, about what it is that you're doing? And so I'm going to share my little template that I share with anybody that I'm working with that needs a mission statement. So what I want you to do is go back and look at yours and see if it passes this litmus test, right? So does your mission statement say why you exist, what you do, who you do it for, and why it matters? And so there's an example I have here. So let's imagine that you're looking at a homeless organization and their mission is to alleviate homelessness in short. So how they might say that to a potential funder or online is, our mission is to alleviate homelessness by providing shelter and resources that will help unemployed and underemployed individuals regain self-sufficiency. That's right at 20 words. Now, I get it's a little wordy, doesn't have to be. You can reduce that even further if you, but I had another slide, if you'd like to. But the point is making sure you've got a mission statement that is broad and nimble enough to be able to have anybody reading it understand what you do, why you do it, who you do it for. That's really important to you for funding. And so that's just an example. So let's spend a little time talking about some hazards. We're still in level 1. So we're still at par. We're still where everybody typically is, but there's hazards there. Okay. And hazard number 1 is being self-funded forever. So it's not like you shouldn't be self-funded. At some point, everybody's new once, right? And so you probably funded the organization's application to be tax exempt. You're probably funding your initial informationals, pamphlets, things that you're sending out, your initial budget. But we have got to move you over to the side of receiving public funds if you're a public charity, because that's required. And so your self-funding shouldn't be just you founders that are out there on our webinar today. So your board is a part of your team and they should help you. And then individuals that you're close to can help you. So while you might not have all family members on a board, they can certainly contribute to your organization, and that would be public donations. Limited or no board support is what we're actually talking about, isn't it? And so not having the kind of board support that your mission deserves. And I say your mission because you're not doing this for you. It's really not about you. It's about whatever it is that you've decided is needs your attention, all right? Your gap in services. It could be there needs to be more cultural art so children are exposed. It could be animals that need rescuing. It could be children that need rescuing. It could be homelessness, like we talked about, food insecurity. The list goes on. And so having board support isn't about you. It's about the mission and finding others who care about this mission like you do and getting their support from the beginning. Unrelated business income. Gosh, you guys, sometimes it's like we feel like we've got to get a money grab going, like there's a grant there or there's a money opportunity. And so what we tend to do is we tend to bring in income by any legal means. But the problem with that is that while you're not necessarily breaking a human physical law, you are not adhering to the purpose of your nonprofit. The IRS says that whatever you do to generate income needs to be mission aligned work. So that's what the IRS says. And if you're not doing or engaging in mission aligned revenue generating activities on a regular basis, the IRS considers that unrelated business income. And that's taxable income. And I don't want you guys to be taxed. So we want to make sure that you are doing things in your nonprofit that's aligned with your mission. And let me just give you an example. I want to hang out here because it's easy to say be in alignment, but what does that mean? And so there's an example I love to share because this one usually hits some buttons because it seems like it should be mission aligned, but it isn't. I use the example of a mentoring organization that mentors kids during the week. And on the weekend, they use their facility for movies. The movies bring in lots of money. People pay for the movies, the popcorn. And you guys know the popcorn usually is more than the movie itself here nowadays. And so you buy all these movie tickets and you sell them and people purchase them and they have an amazing, very enjoyable time with you. So they come back week after week. So now this is a regular source of income that you are generating, but it has zero to do with your mission. Yes, you are probably going to use all of that revenue toward your mission, but that revenue that you are getting under the nonprofit's name doesn't have anything to do with the mission. Your mission is to mentor children, not to hold movie nights, right? A movie night once in a while is a fundraiser. Movie nights that happen on a regular basis to generate income is now an income producing activity that's not mission aligned. And so in that case, all of the money you generated from those movies are not tax deductible. So that's an example. And I'm sure you guys can ask me more questions about that if you have it. And the other thing that I want to share, last point here, if you find yourself in these categories, being self-funded forever, not getting board support, engaging in activity that's not mission aligned, if you can see our gentleman there just kind of looking at the plane take off, this is where we find ourselves years later, just kind of watching everybody else soar, right? And we never get to the point where we are actually soaring. We are busy, but not productive. And we don't want you in that space. I'm looking up and I don't really see any questions, Gary. I'm looking at the Q&A. I'm not looking at it, but I'm looking. Oh, now I've got a question.
Libby Greer asks, how many fundraisers is too many when you're trying to raise funds?
But there's not any that's too many. So IRS gives you some leeway with fundraisers. You can have fundraisers every single week. Here's the difference. If you're having a car wash, maybe a movie night, a fashion show, a banquet, silent auction, you're doing random things to get in money. That's one. I mean, if that's what you choose to do, that's great. It's no longer a fundraiser if it's your regular source of activity that you're doing on a regular basis to generate income, doing the same thing. Now that's an income generating activity that is no longer a fundraiser. This is what you're doing to generate income. And so you can do random things in random times, but it's when it's regular that you're doing this regularly, then that's when it's no longer a fundraiser. I hope that makes a bit of sense.
Does that mean that you should maybe juggle your ideas?
I would.
Okay.
Yeah, I totally would. So if I know that the movie night brings in lots of money, I might do it once a month. I wouldn't do it every week. Doing it every week, every Saturday, to bring in money. Now that's income generating. That's not a fundraiser. That's what you're doing to generate income. Fundraisers are random. Fundraisers aren't consistent source of the same funding, avenue or income generating avenue that you're doing or modality every single week. If you're going to do that, then it's got to be related to your mission. So think about like this is a good example, the Girl Scouts. They have their fundraisers with the cookie sales, yummy cookies, right? And they are out there every day, especially in the spring. Well, I think they're online now, you guys. Anyway, so long story short, the girls are selling these amazing cookies. And the reason why they're able to do it, and even though they are Girl Scouts and they do other activities, a part of their mission is to help girls learn entrepreneur and leadership skills. And so the entrepreneur comes in when they are selling those cookies, and leadership is they are literally proactive in designing their strategy for selling those cookies. And so because they've made it a part of their strategy and their mission, it's mission aligned. So all of the money that's generated, because they're doing this on a regular basis, so it's not just a fundraiser. So that's mission aligned work. Hopefully that makes sense. Yeah. All right. So we're going to go above par. This is better than expected. Believe it or not, many organizations never get to the place that we're going to talk about now. And this is considered like very good. So if you're a new nonprofit and you're doing some of these things, then you're doing, there's other nonprofits in this category, but not as many as you would think. All right. And so this is about doing things with decency and in order, right? And so first is federally compliant. Believe it or not, most nonprofits do submit their annual registration or annual, for the IRS. So they'll submit their annual return, Annual return is your IRS 990 or your IRS 990 EZ. And if you don't earn the level of income that requires that you submit either of those two returns, then you'll at least submit a notice, which is your IRS 990N. And so one of those three 990s are submitted to the IRS every year, whether you're bringing in zero income or an abundance in billions, because there are nonprofits that do. And you're letting the IRS know that you are still in business. Here's your current information. And this is where your income has fallen in terms of category. Most nonprofits will do that, right? And so that's being, above par. And I say most nonprofits, let me just qualify that statement. Last I saw on the IRS's website, it hovered around 30 to 40%. And that's why you're not in the everybody is doing it. Most of you are doing it, not everybody. Board meetings. Most nonprofits will have a board meeting, even if it's once a year, which is required. They're having board meetings. And so that's a legal requirement if you're a corporation. Most nonprofits have a budget. Regardless whether it's the kind of budget you need or that will get you approved, most nonprofits are operating from some plan for their money, right? And so that's most of you. Then there's financials. Many nonprofits have financial statements or the ability to get their financial statements, reported either from a bookkeeper or a CPA, or you're doing it yourself with QuickBooks. So financial statements, you're aware of them, and you are producing financial statements, right? So that's just above par, right? Average person is doing above average person is doing that. But here's the thing, and this is great. And so not to be the Debbie Downer, but I talk to so many nonprofits every day. And so I want to talk about some of these categories that we just mentioned. So although you're compliant on the federal level, I talk to at least 2-3 nonprofits every single month without fail. And I've been doing this for years now, who have lost or had their organizations revoked at the state level, even before the federal government finds out about it, because they're not state compliant. And so the state that you're in, possibly, not all of them, but possibly has an annual registration requirement, because the state wants to know you're still in business, you're still alive, right? Everything is still working the way it's supposed to. The state wants to know that. Oh, and they also want their tax money. So they want you to pay them every single year to be, an active entity. That's fair. You're a nonprofit. That means that your annual registration is 9 times out of 10 less money than the regular S Corp or LLC. So you're going to get a discount most often, but you're not doing it. Many nonprofits are not completing their annual registration, and they become revoked as a result. Charitable registration. Many nonprofits are not completing their charitable registration, although most states in our country require it. A charitable registration is where you're asked to register with the state before you start to solicit donations from state residents. The state wants to know that you're out there and that you're doing it, and they want their checks and balances to make sure that you should be doing it, right? There are people who have done some nefarious things and probably shouldn't manage money. And so the state wants to do their background and make sure that you are not one of those folks. And here's the issue. Many nonprofits aren't doing this. I actually talked to a nonprofit earlier this year, or was it late last year, early this year, who was bringing in almost $1 million and had never even registered his charity in his state, and his state required registration. And so that's actually an activity that can get you in legal trouble. So it's not just a no-no. It is actually something that you can have penalties associated with, criminal and civil. And so you're wanting to make sure that you determine, not anybody else, you determine whether or not your state has charitable registration. And you can do that by going to the Secretary of State's office to find that out, or calling, visiting them online. There's multiple ways to do that, more than one way to peel a banana, I guess. But you can do that. You can find out. And then if you find out that your state is a required state for registration, register. So many times your state will offer some leeway. They'll say, well, you're exempt if you're a church or a school or, firefighting organization. You're exempt if you're under 15, 20, 30,000. And so just find out your requirements, right? That's your responsibility. You are managing a corporation, right? And so you are responsible for making sure that you're in alignment with legal requirements. And so, but many nonprofits aren't. And so I'm bringing this to your attention so you can go check it out for you. All right. Go check it out and make sure. And the other
Cheryl,
thing is,
Cheryl, let me ask a couple questions real quick about that.
Absolutely.
You said that most states, so not all states, require it. Is that true?
Most states, and pardon me, one more time, Gary.
Most states require registration, but I got that impression, but not all states. Is that right?
Yeah, not all states. There's 42 out of 50 states that require it. The states that don't, I can't remember all 8, but it's like Texas, I believe it's Arizona, Delaware, it's some of those mid-plain states. So most states require that you register before you start soliciting for donations in their state.
And I don't expect you to be able to quote chapter and verse, but are most of the states that do, are most of the requirements fairly similar, or is there sort of a wide-ranging difference in them?
It's not wide ranging at all. I've looked at so many of them and they're mostly the same. So there's the range that I gave earlier is between $15,000 and $30,000, depending on the state. Most states hover around 20, 25,000. I think Tennessee is 30. That's an anomaly. Most states say that if you're bringing in, under 20, let's just say under 25,000, then you're exempt. So most states have that threshold. Like I said, Tennessee has a larger threshold. So if you're under 30,000 in your state, then you're exempt. Now, I'm using the words most because there's so many states. I don't remember everybody's law. So most states will require you to at least register to let them know you're there, but will not require you to pay a fee for that registration. And fees will vary from $50 to over $200-300, per year, depending on the amount of revenue that a nonprofit brings in. But if your revenue is under that threshold, oftentimes the state will say you do have to register, but you don't have to pay. And some states, like the state I'm in, says you don't even have to register or pay if you're under 25,000. So it's really state specific, but that's the general area that they hover in. And most of them will say no schools, no volunteer firefighter, no orphanage, no church. Those are organizations that are exempt from registration period. So most states will have that exemption.
Okay, and we have one more question about the events, about the
Yeah.
fundraising events. You want to take that now, or you want to wait?
Let's take it. Yeah, we can take that.
Okay. Kelly Johnson asked, what about ongoing events targeting individual donors who provide recurring donations?
Yeah, that's different. So now we're not talking about an activity that you're doing to generate income. We're not talking about a commercial activity anymore. Now we're talking about individuals contributing and you monitoring and really working your donor base. That's considered individual contributions, and you can have the same individual contributing all the time. That's fine. Now, that one individual, to be real clear, can't support the entire organization. Now that turns you into a different category of nonprofit, but receiving individual contributions on a regular basis from individuals is fine because that's not a commercially led activity that you're doing on a regular basis.
We're caught up back to level 2 hazards.
All right, good deal. All right, we're talking about the board, you guys. And so most of you have a board, which is great. I'm so happy because I know some folks are really struggling with even getting the basic board members. But here's the thing I want you just to know, and maybe nobody else will ever know this unless you start to apply for funders who ask you for certain pieces of information, but are your board meetings official? And that means that, did you elect your board of directors? Is there a chairperson that's conducting the meeting? Is there a secretary who is not the same person as the board chair recording that meeting so that there are board meeting minutes that go out to the board members? Is that happening? Because if that isn't, then you don't have an official meeting. Did the secretary or the chair take attendance to make sure there was a quorum? And that just means that you've got at least, half of the board members there so that you can actually vote. I mean, so there's some things that you need to make sure happens before you can say you have an official board meeting. Elect your directors up front, first meeting, so that you've got somebody chairing the meeting and taking the attendance and, documenting the meetings. The meeting minutes. I always inverse that. It is your meeting minutes, your notes from the meeting that you get out to the board members. Have you done that? Because if not, it's unofficial. When you get into your board meeting, what are you talking about? Are you all just talking or are you there to vote? Because board meetings are for voting. Board meetings are specifically to come together, discuss an issue, vote on something, and move your mission forward. If you're just coming together to be coming together, nobody's taking attendance, it's not official, there's not minutes, nobody's really chairing, then that's not a meeting. That's just a get together. That's a gathering. And so at some point you're going to encounter a funder. Federal funders ask this all the time, but occasionally even the private foundation funder will say, send us your last 3 board meeting minutes. And they're going to know if they're fictitious because you look at applications enough, you'll know. So start having those official meetings. And then the board is made up mostly of family. So the IRS asks that you have a diverse meeting, board, et cetera. And so your diverse board doesn't mean culturally diverse. They mean, familial. So making sure that 51% of the board is unrelated to you. And that's really important. It's not even just important to the IRS, which is important in itself, but it's also important to funders. Funders don't want to support your private business. And if you, your mother, your father, and your son, if this is your nonprofit and everybody's on the board, that's your private business. And funders aren't into that. I mean, they want to support a public charity. A public charity has a diverse board. And so thinking about the makeup of your board. So that's a hazard. So wanting you to clean that up if you fall into that category. Your budget. Having no budget at all. Now, I said most of you do, but some of you will have just a list of expenses. This is what we are planning to expend for the year. And it's really not a budget. You don't follow it. The numbers are unrealistic. Who knows where you got that amount for a pen? Pens don't cost $100. Well, maybe some of them, I can't afford those. Most pens that I purchase don't. And so making sure that you've got realistic cost in that budget. And here's the reason. You might be new to the nonprofit arena, but your funder isn't. So your funder is potential funder, they're looking at applications. I want this to really stick with you guys. They're looking at these applications all day, every day. They see budgets all day for the same thing, because usually chances are a funder that funds homelessness is a funder that funds homelessness. So they're looking at homeless budgets all day long. So they know the cost of housing, they know the cost of clothing and food and all those things that you think are unique to your nonprofit because you just discovered it. It's been going on for a long time. These funders see it every day and they know what's in alignment with actual cost, right? And so being really careful not to inflate your budget, because they already know. They know better than you know because they're looking at it all day long. And it's their cost too, remember. It's not, you're not the only one that cares about this. If you're applying for funding, the funder also cares about it. And so they know what to look for. Do you? So taking budget classes, making sure that your budget is based on the activities that you mentioned in your project description, right? And not based on things you just want to have happen. So you've got a project for homelessness, but in your budget, you've got board retreat, spa day, things that literally have nothing to do with the project, right? And but invite me to the spa day. I love a good spa day, but it shouldn't be in the budget, right? And so making sure that your budget is clear, realistic, and based on the project. And then financial statements, as opposed to submitting your standard financial statements. Y'all seen them. If you've done taxes, right? So you've got your balance sheet, your income statement, your cash flow. Those are the three, most common financial statements. And so funders are looking for that. But instead, you send your bank ledger from Bank of America and you let them know these are all the things that I spent money on. That's not what they're looking for. They're not looking for your budget. That budget is a plan. Your financials are so very helpful because the financial statements help them to know what you did, not what you planned, but what happened. And so they want to see if you're fiscally responsible. And that's the reason they ask for the financial statements. They don't expect you to be $1 million nonprofit out the gate. They don't expect that. But if you bring in $100 and it's the $100 that you donated, what they do want to see is that you received a donation of $100 on August the 1st. On August the 15th, you bought program supplies, you did something for the program, right? Or something for operations. They want to see where that $100 went. They want to see that you're responsible and that you're tracking your expenses. And the other, I put this on there for a reason, you guys. The large other expenses on the balance sheet is huge. I see it so many times where people will have everything is just, what you expect. Postage, $250, travel, $1,500, per mileage, marketing, $2,500, fund, all the standard expenses. And then you get to an item that says other, $15,000. That won't float. Funders need to know what's this mysterious other, like what is it that you've spent your precious public funds on? And so having those large miscellaneous and other categories won't float. You're going to actually have to disclose what your spending pattern is. So those cost categories are really important. So no others, right? If you can help it. All right. And so that's the hazards of level 2. Feels like we have a couple of questions before we go to level 3.
We do. We have some other questions.
Okay.
See, I worked that right on in there.
I do.
JB wants to know, what criteria do you look for in building a board?
Yeah, that's a really good one. I tend to speak about that a lot. We didn't in this class, but so you want to look in the beginning for board members. In the beginning, just start small, like people you know, like, and trust. Seriously, don't overthink it. We find ourselves in this thinking pattern. Somebody said analysis paralysis. Somebody sent me an email about that. I thought it was so cute. We analyze things just to death. And so I would say in the very beginning, to get out the gate, just have you and two other people that you know, like, and trust. And then together, the three of you will look and start to figure out, who do we really need? And so you need somebody that is comfortable fundraising, because you're going to have to bring in public funds, right? You need somebody who's analytical, because you're going to need that person that's good with numbers, or they don't mind helping to prepare financial statements or budgets, or they can at least read them, right? Or legal jargon. And then you want somebody that's connected to your community. And that's just somebody that either works in the community that you serve or lives in the community that you serve. In the beginning, don't worry about those things. The first two other people besides you, make sure they're people you know, like, and trust with your mission. Because here's the deal, when you bring on board members, now they are charged with governing the nonprofit and setting the direction, amending that direction if necessary, and you want to protect the mission. You started the organization for a reason. I would grow the board organically, just be very, authentic, and you bring on folks you trust, and then they will bring on somebody they trust, and so on. And pretty soon you'll have the board you desire. But I wouldn't overthink it. And I definitely, this is a Cheryl's opinion. I'm going to tell you what I would tell anybody that I know, like, and trust, right? I wouldn't bring on people that I don't know, haven't met, can't, justify bringing them on other than they have a nice title. Because usually those people aren't going to do anything for your nonprofit, and they don't care about the mission like you do, most often. And so I would say, until you get to the point where that's really just absolutely required, I would bring on people I know, like, and trust. So hopefully that answers that question.
Let me follow up, and we have 3 or 4 other questions that are really good. So I'm really happy about the great questions people are asking. But at one point you talked about the board making sure it's not too family oriented, family based. So when you talk about starting with you and 2 others, by definition, if you want your board to not be family, more than half family, then those 2 people should not be in your family at all as you're starting out with the 3, or at that point, does it not matter yet?
No, at that point, it always, that piece actually always matters. So the 2 others are 2 other people that are not related to you. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Libby Greer, when we submitted our bylaws years ago, we said we would have board meetings 3 times per year. We have at least 1 or 2 a year. Is this acceptable?
No, it's not acceptable, because you're out of compliance with your own guidelines. And so your bylaws are your governing documents for how you're going to govern yourself. And if you're thinking that you're not going to be having the board meeting, the number that you've indicated in the bylaws, then you want to amend the bylaws, either have more meetings or amend the bylaws so that you're in compliance.
Yeah, that's pretty easy to fix. More meetings or change the laws.
Yeah.
Farikia, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, Petty, what percentage of unrelated business income would you suggest be donated to the nonprofit to support its mission?
I don't have a suggestion for that. The only thing I can tell you is that if you're engaging in unrelated business income on a regular basis, you jeopardize your tax determination letter. If you bring in more than $1,000 in any program year from unrelated business income, then you have to disclose that to the IRS on a Form 990T. Once you do that, you're now on the IRS's radar, and they're going to be looking for that. And if you continue to do that, you can jeopardize yourself as a nonprofit. So I would say, if you want to bring in unrelated business income business income, please don't do that. Instead, do it under your for-profit, your small business, or do it under another, yourself. You go, as an individual, you can actually, generate income and then donate it to the nonprofit. The key here is you don't want to operate a commercial type revenue stream under the nonprofit's name, and then think it's going to be tax deductible. It doesn't work that way.
Okay. Stephanie Williams, what are the 3 most important financial statements?
So we gave those, yeah. And so your financial statements are going to be your income statement, your profit and loss, your cash flow, and your balance sheet. And so let me go back. Income statements also called profit and loss. So that's like the same thing. So your income statement, your balance sheet, and your cash flow. Those are typically the financial statements that people look for.
Okay, we got one more from another one from Kelly Johnson. What are your thoughts about inviting a client or someone who with lived experience on your board?
Love that. I think that's an amazing idea. I encourage it every opportunity. It makes a great difference because you can learn firsthand what's really important as opposed to making assumptions that your work, is important. Somebody mentioned to me, I think it was yesterday, I was at another SCORE training, and they said, so often we have our own personal or business blind spots where we're trucking along thinking that we're just so impactful because nobody's told us otherwise, right? And so if you have somebody from the community or somebody that you've already served and supported, they can really help with that blind spot because they're going to be able to share with you what did and didn't work, at least for them. So I think that's a great idea.
Great. We are officially caught up.
Awesome sauce. Okay, guys. And so we're looking at level 3 now, and you can see we're moving along pretty swiftly. So we're going to have plenty of time to answer more questions at the end. We're already at level 3, and this is about being proactive, and that's acting now in anticipation of future problems. And we work so hard in those first 2 levels just to get to the point where we are actually doing those things that's expected of us, legally for sure, and then what the community expects by having our meetings, making sure that we're our alignment to our professional image. All of those things are in place, and so we're at this point where we now get to say, okay, what can we do to be proactive? How can we get ahead of the game, right? And so with proactivity, some of the things that I want you guys to be thinking about is professional development. That's one. Multidisciplinary meetings, partnerships, and funding. And so what I mean by that is professional development. Looking at, you guys are here. You're here today. So looking at the needs that you have as a founder or a nonprofit leader, looking at the needs of the board, of the volunteers, looking at some of those needs that they have in terms of making sure they have an awareness of what their responsibilities are and that they get the training that they need. Invite your team to these SCORE trainings. They're free, you guys. And so can I share this with you all? I'm a nonprofit professional. I charge, and so, I don't ever promote me because I don't like to do that. I charge $180 an hour. I'm not giving any other information that I'm giving today. So it's not like they get this special information and you get the other information. It's the same information. And so bring your folks into these meetings with SCORE because these are they're courtesy. And you're going to get me, you're going to get Gary, you're going to get all the same type of professional information than you would get if you met with me or you met with Gary on, a sidebar. You're going to get the same information. Invite your team in so they get this information, just like you are. And so investing in these success activities means that we're doing things that gives us that additional piece of knowledge that helps us to move our nonprofits forward. And that is so important. We have a series of nonprofit trainings that are coming up. You may not be interested in all of them, but do check them out because there's always going to be something that you can glean. So I want to share that about professional development. In terms of multidisciplinary meetings, that one is huge because there's this adage, this African adage that says, if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. And so I think of that when I think about multidisciplinary or even partnerships. You can go further when you have the support of the community professionals that's working to improve the same community that you're working to improve. That's multidisciplinary. You all have different disciplines. You come together to support the same community or same population of people, right? And so when you do that, you get privy to lots of information that you wouldn't have normally known. And these are people with boots on the ground. So they're not going to give you fluff. They're going to talk to you about what's real out there, how you can make an impactful difference. And they're also usually going to share funding sources and resources with you. So if there's a funding opportunity, they're either going to want you to team up with them, or they're going to tell you about it so you can pursue it on your own, but you get access to information that you wouldn't have normally gotten access to. All right. So multidisciplinary team meetings are really important. And so it begs the next question. How do you get at those? Like, where do I find these amazing people? Well, I have found just in my past is I have identified multidisciplinary teams going at the state level, by going to my state's website, looking up the state agency that is closely aligned with what I'm doing. So if it's, homelessness, if it's child welfare, if it's senior or community services, whatever it is, I will find a state agency that is aligned with that. And then I would contact them, get on their listserv, because chances are they're responsible for hosting and or sponsoring these meetings and bringing together community organizations. And so that's how I've always participated, starting with identifying the state agency first. And you can go to your state's website, look at the laundry list of of agencies that every state has. So Tennessee.gov, and look up departments or agencies, right? That's one way to get at it. So when you attend these meetings, chances are you're going to sync. There's going to be synergy with 1, 2, or 3 people in the meeting. And that's where the beginnings of amazing and beautiful partnership, starting the dialogue, having the communication about the individuals that you serve that's in common and how you can work together. Take that conversation to the next level and formalize it with an MOU, right? And so through that MOU, which is a memorandum of understanding, you all determine how you're going to partner together. And then you provide those very meaningful community linkages that serve so many purposes. But just, I'm going to tell you two. The first purpose is you're going to be able to help people that you serve in areas that you don't service. So things that they need that fall outside of your scope, you'll be able to now refer them to the correct community partner that can help them. The second reason this is amazing opportunity for you is because funders are asking you how you're collaborating these days, and they want to know who your partners are. And so now you get to, in truth, share with them how you're partnering with these different agencies. So it makes a fundamental difference. The last quarter thing that I want to talk to you about here in our fourth quarter is funding. And so being proactive isn't now just anytime you hear of an opportunity, you're just randomly applying for just anything. Now it's about really having some plans in place. It's about planning your next steps, right? Getting ahead of the game, looking at a strategic plan, a fundraising plan, grants, and fee for services. And so when we think about income generation, I'm going to actually start with the strategic plan, although a strategic plan isn't necessarily an income generating document, but what it does do is it helps you to narrow your scope of activities over the next 2 or 3 years so that you really refine what it is or the direction that you're going in. Your strategic plan is multi-purpose. So you're going to look at not only your funding goals, but what are the goals for the organization? Who do you aspire to be as an organization? Do you want to be renowned for making sure that you are one of the best employers out there? Do you want to be renowned as possibly a human-centered organization that people can go to and get what, the services that they need, very into customer service? Whatever it is that you want to look like in the next 3 years, this is the basis for your strategic plan. Like, what do you want to do? And then you start to create, you guys have seen work plans where you've got those different columns. This is the goal. These are the people responsible. This is the activity. This is how we know we're on track, right? And so you'll create your work plan, which is going to actually show you how you get there. You've got the goal, but now how do you get there? And that work plan is going to have your strategies, okay? So we're going to offer workforce development. We're going to follow up with our our clients every single week. We're going to make sure we connect them to employers. So you'll have your activities and your strategies. And then you'll look back to see, did they work? Right? You'll have your checkpoints. Maybe it's monthly, maybe it's quarterly, where you just look back to say, okay, we said we were going to do this thing. We did it. And what impact did we have? Like, what were our results? And so that's your strategic plan, and you want that. And that's a part of your growth. You want a fundraising plan. I've got my little oversimplified little circle here, but in general, your fundraising plan is going to be the plan that helps you identify who you're targeting for money. Right? You're going to use other people's money, right? So who are you going to be targeting? What types of donors do you expect to have interest in what you're doing? How are you going to ask them to, support you? How are you going to engage them in what it is that you're doing so they feel a part of it, right? And then how are you going to thank them profusely? I tell this story often, and I love telling the story because I didn't realize I was in this circle till years after it was over. But I once gave to an organization for the blind that supported, sight. But what they gave in exchange, this was their, in exchange for helping us, we're going to do this for you. And so they would give these garbage bags. And so every year I'd get like cases of garbage bags that I could not use because they weren't any good. Paper would fall through. But I did it because they had such a compelling ask. And honestly, I would share with you guys if I can remember, but I remember when they called me, they came by to the house, and then I got on their list, and I gave years and years. I was just one of those very reliable supporters. And then I decided, well, what am I doing? That's not even my cause. My cause is domestic violence and child welfare. But I gave to them because the ask was so compelling. And I found myself in this loop of giving every single year. It was probably a decade. So I say that to you guys to say, have a very compelling ask, follow up, keep these folks on your list because they could turn into multi-year givers, right? And so it happened with me, and I totally didn't realize it till after I was out of it, but it can happen. And so have your fundraising plan, and your fundraising plan should include grant applications. And so there's two angles to get at grants, right? The first is using an LOI, which is like a small piece of a bigger proposal. The full proposal includes everything. Like when I say everything, you guys, I mean, you've got 10 to 40 pages of content in this full proposal. The letter of inquiry, it's an abridged version of everything that you're going to be talking about in your proposal. The letter of inquiry is normally submitted first. The full proposal is normally submitted after. So what's in them? Good question. So the full proposal is going to have things like your organization's background, why you're needed, what gap you're filling in society, who you're targeting, a description of your project, what goals you anticipate having in the year, how you're going to evaluate those goals, and your budget. Whereas the letter of inquiry didn't need all of those pieces, and certainly not in the terms of how much you talk about it. So the letter of inquiry is 2 to 4 pages. You're going to give a paragraph about your organization, another paragraph about your program. You're going to request something and share why you need that, and you're going to attach your budget. It's very simple. You guys, let me share something. And this is the reason I really like letter of inquiries. I want everybody to have one, and please use them. The letter of inquiry, you create your template, and there's only 3 things that can happen as a result of that. So the letter of inquiry is used to seek funding. Either you're going to just get funded. That funder will send you a check. No report due. Here's the money. Go forth and be merry, right? Second thing is they use the letter of inquiry as a litmus test to see if you were mission aligned. And if you are, then they're going to send you a link to give them more information or an address to send your proposal. The third thing that can happen is they just deny you. And I'm okay with either of those 3 when I'm sending a letter of inquiry, because it didn't cost me a lot of time once I had my template in place. So create a letter of inquiry template for yourself, right? And then you can use that template again and again and again, obviously changing out who you're sending it to and aligning it to their mission. So in harmony with your mission to Give for Youth programming, we do the same thing. In harmony with your mission to alleviate food insecurity, we have a food pantry. So you're going to align it with what it is they say they do. You can get 10 of those letters out in mail within an hour. I know you can. So that's an easy fix to applying for funding quickly. But anyway, so you want this proposal process to be a part of your overall fundraising strategy. And so I'm going to answer a question that hasn't been asked yet, but I would want to know this. What's the difference between the proposal and all these other things you just talked about, Cheryl? Glad you asked. So the proposal is a narrowly defined document that goes after specific funding for a specific program. It is very narrow. So it's not going to cover every possible thing the organization can do. You are seeking funding for a pantry. You're going to talk about why a food pantry is needed and the gap in services this pantry fulfills and what the pantry does day to day. You're not going to talk about all the other things you might be doing. You're going to talk about the pantry. So it's very narrow in its scope because it's used for a specific purpose, and it's usually tailored to the funder that you're applying for. And so what I mean by that is you're not going to tailor what you do. Whatever you do day to day is what you do. You don't change that. But the funder might not be asking about all of those aspects. So the funder will ask you various specific questions, answer their questions. So you tailor your responses to what's being asked. And that is so vitally important. So often I see proposals and grant applications where people will say, well, they didn't ask me this, but I just needed them to know it. And so they'll spend all of their time sharing with the funder information that the funder didn't ask for. Meanwhile, the funder's questions never got asked and they wonder why they're not approved. So it's tailored to the funder's application process. So that's really important to know. I'm going to finish this piece and I'm going to take questions because this is going to round up the grants. Grants are granted to solve a problem. And I added this is an add-on for 2023 because I never talked about this in the past. So this is important to you as you start to determine, well, how do I know if I'm mission aligned or if I should apply, et cetera? You're going to have many questions and I get it. So if you operate a food pantry, you're only operating a food pantry because you probably notice that people didn't have enough food in your community. So when you're looking for grant opportunities, you're not looking for food pantry, you're looking for grants with the keyword food insecurity, right? Because that's the problem you're solving. When you are youth mentoring, you're looking for grants that say for keywords, at-risk youth, maybe juvenile delinquency, dropout, teen pregnancy, you name it, STEM, and arts and culture. So you're looking for, your keyword is the problem you're solving. You are the solution. So you're not looking for grants for necessarily the solution. You're looking for grants that address the problem that you're addressing because you are the solution. I hope that makes sense. All right, so we'll take some questions before we get to level 4. If we have any.
Oh, yeah, we got questions. Okay. Rhonda Cummings has 2, one of which is, do you have an example of a template for the LOI? And while I was waiting for you to finish up, I went and looked, and you can Google that, and there are plenty of templates out there. I don't know if you have any particular things that you would recommend, but if you, Rhonda, if you want to just go on and Google letter of inquiry template, you'll find all kinds up there.
You sure will. And we also, through SCORE, are going to have a training coming up where we train on the two-page grant proposal, which is your letter of inquiry. And so we're actually going to train and show live examples. And I think for this one, Gary, didn't we give a template then? I think we did. I think we did. So if you are interested, so if you can't wait for that training, then I would encourage you to do just as Gary suggested. You literally can go online and Google it. If you're comfortable with AI, you can go to AI and have AI create one, just making sure that you have those key sections. You'll have these slides, making sure you have those key sections because all letter of inquiries are not created equal. So I've listed out those bullets of what to include, just making sure you include those bullets and you should be fine.
And the session that Cheryl just referenced is on October the 17th, nonprofit series number 4, how to write a 2-page grant proposal. So
that's one you don't want to miss.
That's coming up for sure. And Rhonda and JB were actually thinking the same lines. You talked about the nonprofit that had the compelling story. Do you have an example of what a compelling story is?
I would love for you to, in the Q&A, tell me what it is you do, and let's turn yours into a compelling story. I literally talk to thousands of nonprofits every day. So I want to give you the gist of a compelling story is a real issue, right? That you can provide facts around, right? So a real issue that you can provide facts around that speak in person, not third person. So face, person to person about why something is necessary. So if you write in the Q&A what it is you do, let's turn yours into a compelling ask.
There you go, Rhonda. Put in your mission, put in your idea, and we will live turn it into a compelling story.
Yeah.
And from Maria, and I'm not sure if you want to take this now or you want to wait towards the end, what level of data governance is needed with nonprofit organizations, data safety, privacy, and exchange?
So I would say, so now we're getting into internal controls. And so there's so many great ones out there. As a new nonprofit, you're just at risk. You're small and you probably haven't put in your together internal controls. And so I would say, yes, making sure that you've got good software that protects your data, make sure things are password protected. If you're going to share files like from QuickBooks, make sure they're encrypted. I mean, so just the very basics, but I'm going to really a lot of times turn a lot of this back onto you guys. We have a training on internal controls, but you could literally go to online and Google examples of nonprofit internal controls. And so not only will you get a litany of, responses, but you'll get some ideas of how to get put yours together too. So you mentioned data control, but there's also the physical control, making sure you're protecting the risk of losing money. So dual authorization is one where you've got more than one person that's authorized to sign a check before money is spent. You've got segregation of duties. That's another internal control where you're making sure that the same person that's handling the money for deposit maybe isn't the same person that's handling the money for reconciling the bank. You've got internal controls with safety in your office. Just, having a policy that files are locked in the office, that's an internal control. Reimbursement policies, making sure that you don't have people coming to you with fictitious receipts or amounts that were not pre-approved. This list goes on and on. So I love these questions so much because what I really want to share with you, even though I'm giving some feedback on answering your question, I want you guys to feel free to go to Google. Seriously, I go all the time. Go to Google with a lot of these things and you can get, you do have to filter through, but a lot of these questions that y'all have, there are answers out there from reputable sources like the National Council of Nonprofits. That's a reputable source. Candid is a Candid Foundation Center. They have lots of reputable information on their website. Independent sector, I think it's independentsector.org. So there's lots of really great nonprofit sector organizations that support nonprofits on a national basis that can give you reliable and consistent information. It's just now a matter of awareness, right? Knowing they're out there and then utilizing that information. I hope that answers that question.
I think we are ready for level 4. I know Rhonda is busy working on her example, so we can get an example going for her. But why don't you head on to level 4?
Let's do it. And so for level 4, being productive, having the quality or power of producing, especially in abundance, right? And so now we've talked about getting ahead of the game. We've talked about just, doing the basic things everybody else is doing. Now we got to get into results. So there comes a point where we really have to stop being our own enablers, So we give ourselves the pat on the back, the atta girls or whatever. But at some point, we have to not make excuses and we just need to do things that are result oriented, period. Things that yield results. And so let's talk about some of those. I've got like 3 categories here. The first thing is registrations, making sure that you are registered for some key with some key organizations or online, websites. GuideStar is one of them. GuideStar is one of them because one, they're going to collect all the data on all public and private, foundations and charities across the United States. So you're there. So yeah, if you are a nonprofit, you are probably in the GuideStars data bank, which means when you apply for funding, funders can see you too. If you haven't signed up for your free account, then that means you probably haven't updated your vision, your mission statement, some key things that will help foundations know that you're on top of your game. But the other reason is you can also research them. That's the reason I use it. So I go there so that I can see their IRS tax determination letters. I can see their IRS 990s, pardon me. And I look at those IRS 990s because I want to know who they fund, where they fund at, how much they give, that kind of thing. And so that's a key registration for you. 211.
You have to Cheryl, do you have to register to be part of GuideStar? That's not automatic. Once you get your 501c3, it automatically pops up there.
Yeah, and so you have to register to search. You don't have to register to be in the database. So they're going to put you in the database so other people can search you. But if you want to conduct a search, then you have to register.
Okay, thank you.
That's a great question. So 211, making sure that you're registered with United Way. I mean, that's important. Funders still go there. You know, one of the reasons I love registering with 211, in addition to the fact that it's free, is you can actually see a listing of other organizations that's doing a lot of the things that you're doing. I remember, I'll never forget writing a grant for an organization that was mentoring in a community. And they said to me, Cheryl, we're the only ones of our kind doing this thing. And I thought, we're going to find out. So I did some searches online, didn't find that there. I went to the United Way 211, and you were able to put in the zip code and then the kind of organization you're looking for. And true enough, and I don't get this often, we found tons of mentoring organizations. You guys, you name the activity, but we did not find a youth mentoring organization that was doing specifically what they were doing. And so what we did was we used that in the grant proposal to show how they were really filling a niche and a need, so they were able to get funding. So I love that. So register your organization, but it also will serve for you as a SWOT analysis almost. So you get to go out and see who else is out there. You know, what are your threats and opportunities based on what you know to be true in your community. So they don't have all nonprofits registered, but they do have a good, nice bank of nonprofits. So get yourself in there, United Way 211. I would say register with the government, the federal government, sam.gov, if you're planning to pursue federal grants. Man, you could be doing amazing work, have an amazing proposal, great federal government application. But if you're not registered with sam.gov, you won't get federal funding. So you do need that registration, and it takes a couple of weeks to get it. So sam.gov is a key registration if that's the route you want to go in. And I've got there's so many. We have a class through SCORE on resources. And so we cover so many more, but for this training, TechSoup is important because they give you discounts on software. And they also are the third-party identifier for Google for Nonprofit. So you can't have Google for Nonprofit unless you've registered with TechSoup. And so you want Google for Nonprofit, even if you don't use the other benefits that they have. They will give you unlimited email addresses for your group. And you don't pay anything. And so I know that many nonprofits are paying per email address. And if you were a part of Google for Nonprofit, then you wouldn't have to pay for those email addresses. There's also MailChimp, so you could mail 2,000 emails for free. And I've added 48in48.org because many of you may not have a website, or you may be in need of a new one, and they offer free website development for nonprofits that have their 501c3 determination. So these are some key registrations, all of which will help you to move your nonprofit forward. The other thing is, this is about being productive. This is going to be a no-brainer. Just literally start your program. So many people, we grant write for lots of folks who a year later, they still haven't started. They're still wanting to meet with me. They want to meet with me on and on and on and on and on and on, meeting to meet, and never starting the program. And funders don't fund your idea. They fund your program. They want to fund your work, what you're doing. And you can start your program with no money after you're tax determined and paid that registration fee from the IRS. Then you can pay, literally you could do coordinating resources and referrals. I have one nonprofit who wants to have a holistic center for energy healing. So she's got a very unique, idea of what she wants to do. And she's waiting. And we had this conversation and I said, even before you get your center, even before it's up and running, you can actually offer training classes on Zoom. You can, go, do it that way. You can meet at your library. Most libraries are free for nonprofits or very low cost, if not free. And so there's a way that you can start your program, you guys, even if you are referring the group that you ultimately want to serve to others doing what you're going to be doing. Just get yourself out there so that you've got something to track. You've got to start tracking your data, because that's what funders are going to ask you for. They're going to ask, when did the program start? And how many individuals do you serve and project to serve over the next year? You want to answer those things in truth, and you can't if you haven't started your program. And so many of you are afraid to start your program. Like you've got these big, bold missions, and you tell people proudly, we're going to be alleviating this, or we're going to be satisfying that, and all the things that you're going to be doing. But then it's like you're gun shy when it's time to actually start. It's like you're afraid of failure. You can't fail. So get that out of your mind. Start your program and start helping the people that are out there that need you. So that's what I would say to that. And then being productive is, again, about results, making things happen. When you start to look for funding, you start your research, inevitably you're going to have a question. You will. You don't need a grant expert for these questions. Contact the funder. That's who needs to answer the questions, right? So you've got a question about a particular grant. I want you to find the contact us now, whether it is by email or whether it is by telephone. I don't really know a funder that says don't contact us. And I want to give you guys a pro tip here. The time to contact the funder is before you submit an application, because once you submit an application and you start contacting them, asking them, well, how soon are you going to review? And when are you going to get back to us? You will go to the bottom of the stack or the top of the denial stack. So the time to ask your questions is before you submit, because then they want to hear from you, right? And so contact the funder, and then no brainer, apply. I've got people who are so afraid to apply. If you apply, the worst thing they can do is deny you. They're not coming to your house. They're not going to do that, I promise. They're going to just deny you. And then that means that they may have denied you. It could be a denial in error. I've had those. It could be a denial because they've run out of money and you've done everything right, but they don't tell you that. I've had those. It could be a denial because it's just so competitive. They had to go with, remember the nice donut shop? I've had those, right? So you're going to get more denials than you are going to get acceptance, but you will get accepted if you continue and don't give up. This is not easy work. It is very gratifying work, okay? But you will have to put in a little elbow grease, right? You're going to actually have to do the work. And so I hear a lot of folks asking me all the time, can you give me an example? Can you do this? Can you do that? I want to just share this with you, because I absolutely love you. So I'm going to do whatever I can do for you. But at the end of the day, this is your job, yours. You are responsible for this. So you've got to figure these things out. You do. And so there's resources to bounce things off of. You got SCORE, contact SCORE. You can have a mentor until you're done and you don't need any more mentors. But in terms of figuring out your path and how to make your widget work, that's you. It's all you. Programs that are very new, success rates are low. They are, but there's still success rates. See, I come from the school of thought that if I only saw 1% chance, I would say, yes, I'm in there. I'm going for my 1%, so that's who I am. And so I want you to feel that way. When you get to an excellent success rate, then you're hovering around 40% of grants submitted where you get accepted. And the only time you're going to really get 100% success rate is from possibly those organizations that they've already funded you in the past, and they offer multi-level or multi-year funding. And as long as you did what you were supposed to do with the original funding, chances are they'll fund you. So that will increase your success rate. But for the most part, you just have to work really hard. So send out those letters of inquiry, send out or apply for those online grant applications, and do this on a weekly basis. And so I want to share one more thing, another pro tip from me to you. I do this every day. This isn't a side gig for me. I don't do it when I just feel like or when I'm done with my day job. You guys are my day job, but that doesn't mean that I'm applying for grants all day long. And I don't encourage you to either. Pick a grant date. Otherwise, you're going to go bonkers. You'll always be on the lookout, watching out for grants, and you're going to have anxiety over it. Don't do that to yourself. Not worth it. Find a day where you can apply for grants for maybe a 2 to 3 hour period straight. Then close that laptop and go on to the next activity, because otherwise it'll drive you crazy. It will. And I don't want to do that. We need you sane so you can help your community. All right. So we've talked about all of our levels, and I'm not sure where you guys fall here, but I do know this. You've got the information now. You've taken the red pill, no going back. And so now you have the information, and there is no reason why, if I talk to you in 90 days, you're not on number 12, level 4, number 12, where you're tracking results, at least, right? You've done all these things. I know it's possible. I know that. And so to reach out to SCORE for mentorship, you can go to score.org/Memphis. And I forgot to ask where you guys are from. I usually do that in the chat. If you're not local, no worries. Go to score.org and you can just find your local chapter from the main website. You can do that. And then we have telephone numbers here, email address, and the location. So if you need to call SCORE, email SCORE, you can do that. But most of what you need is literally from the main website, where you can just find a workshop or find yourself a mentor. And I believe, and I believe this to be true, that SCORE has their mentor profiles that's listed too, so you can get an idea of what the mentors specialize in. So that's going to be very helpful to you as you go along. I'm Cheryl Smith. I am with Dewlyn Nonprofit Services. Love what I do, love, who I do it for. I always say, I think I hit the job jackpot. I get to actually work with people who are like humanitarians. So I wouldn't trade this for anything. I get to work with you. Thank you guys for showing up today. I appreciate you more than you know, and happy to take more questions. And particularly we can go through and kind of develop an ask for Miss Rhonda. If she's
well, Cheryl, we hit the jackpot by having you. So thank you for your wonderful information.
Thank you.
I have one here before we get to Rhonda, from Stephanie Williams. Is cyber grants a good place to register and look as well?
So cyber grants, they're a platform that's utilized by many, many private foundations. And so registering with them is helpful. And so one of the things I don't know anymore, because I don't always do it, is I don't know if you register, and I'm thinking you have to register separately for each. You do. Cyber grants is a platform. And so do I think it's helpful? Yes, absolutely. One of the things I like about cyber grants is, even though they have multiple private foundations that they're contracted with to, receive grant applications, they're pretty much the same grant application. There's very little variation. So if you complete one, you should easily be able to complete the next. And a good example of that is also, who else does that? Lots of them do that, but Wells Fargo, that's what I was thinking. Wells Fargo is another one that does the same thing as cyber grants, where if you get through one Wells Fargo application, because they actually facilitate grant applications for lots of other organizations, but one application is pretty much the same application for all of the different organizations. You'll have to apply separately, but you'll be using the same information that you've submitted. I hope that makes sense. But cyber grants, that's a thumbs up.
All right, a couple other things before we get to Rhonda. And Rhonda, I promise we will get to you. We have a webinar that's done by the great folks at the Memphis Public Library. And one of those webinars is about the great information they have for nonprofits to start. I put that in the chat. I put the link to that in the chat a little while ago, so feel free to take care of that. Our own Jan Lee, who is our Zoom queen, she's behind the curtain, turning the dials and twisting the knobs. So she has a question she wanted me to pass on, Cheryl. She says, I have a client who has a nonprofit, but she needs to convert to an LLC. Are there any tips on doing that?
So that depends on the state. Thanks for that question. I get it often. So different states have different requirements, and I'm not sure at the state level. I have to actually go into your state level and look at your conversion matrix. So every state has a conversion matrix chart that shows them what can be converted from what. So for instance, my state doesn't allow you to transfer from an LLC to a nonprofit. Your state might allow that. So I would say look at your state level Secretary of State to see what's required. And then follow those guidelines. Now I'm going to give you my opinion. I wouldn't do that. I would start a new nonprofit. One, it's almost the same process. You're going to have to pay almost the same fee, submit new articles of incorporation. The only thing you're really trying to hang on to is an EIN, which I wouldn't want if it was attached to an LLC, because IRS doesn't like LLC. I would literally just start my brand new nonprofit, because once you convert it, you're starting, it's almost like you're starting over, a rebirthing process anyway. I would get myself a clean EIN and start a new nonprofit. That's just Cheryl. But you can convert if your state allows you to, and you'd have to go to your state and see if they have a conversion matrix to see if that's allowed. And it's probably not the answer you want, but that's like the most truthful answer I can give.
I may have not read the question well, based on what I heard you answer, but I think she has a nonprofit and wants to convert it to an LLC, not an LLC, and convert it to a nonprofit.
Okay. Many states don't allow that at all. And so here's the reason. You don't own where you own a LLC and you have those rights, you don't own a nonprofit public charity. So most states require that when your public charity ends, that it has to go, every asset, all that's left over goes to another public charity. So again, you guys, I would defer to your Secretary of State's office to see if that's allowable in your state. Most states don't allow that.
All right, let's get to Rhonda. We got a couple more after that. We're going to try to squeeze in, but this is what Rhonda's written, okay? The Make a Night Foundation mission.
Uh-oh, I can't hear. Uh-oh. Did we freeze?
I think we have a freeze, but typically it doesn't last that long.
Okay.
Let's just wait it out.
Okay, okie doke.
I'm sorry, I got disconnected. Are you, did you hear any of that?
No, I didn't.
Rhonda, I'm sorry. We're going to try this again. Okay. The Make a Night Foundation mission is dedicated to creating a pipeline to educate communities, equip entrepreneurs, and empower youth to achieve their purpose and passion. And then her program pillars are: number 1, economic and community development; number 2, education; number 3, health and wellness; number 4, workforce/entrepreneurship/franchise ownership.
So what we were going to do, that's okay. I'm going to do something different with you, Miss Rhonda. So when we say a compelling ask, what I meant is to share with me, for instance, when I said that our mission is to alleviate homelessness, you've got multi-level things that I really feel like you've got a lot of different program cost centers. And so I probably would handle yours totally different. So I'm going to go into Q&A and grab yours, and we're going to do something very unique if I'm permitted to do this. Where did you get that from, Gary? I'm going to grab her whole text.
It's in the chat.
Okay, yeah. So chat. Economic. Is this oh, I see Rhonda. Okay, Rhonda.
Yeah, there's 2 of them on there. One at 11:13 and one at 11:22 if you have the time.
Okay, so do we have, I'm going to do something that we have never done, Gary, but we're going to do an experiment here. Would that be okay with Miss Rhonda? All right.
Go
so
for
Rhonda,
it.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to plug you into AI, because you've got multiple things going on. So I'm going to plug you into AI, and I'm going to show you super quick what AI can do to help. And I'm going to show you what I would do, because I don't 100% trust AI. I have to still go in and tweak things all the time, but we're going to do that for you just because you got a lot, which is good. That's not a complaint. All right, give me 1 second and I'm going to come back to you guys and I'm going to just show you what we do when we use.
And as she's doing that, that is a great reminder that AI is who was it that said trust but verify? Yeah, believe what they're saying, but go back and double check everything. Everything you see, make sure that AI hasn't come up with something that doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Yeah, it will hallucinate. All right, so hold on. So this is what we did. And so I'm literally taking the information that you gave me and we're plugging it in. So one moment. All right, and I'm going to show you guys how to do this. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and screen share. Oh, I love this so much. I teach AI. I love this. All right, so we're going to find my little AI screen. I think this is it. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so you guys, I went over to ChatGPT and so I'm in ChatGPT 4, but ChatGPT 3.5, you can do the very same thing. And so what I wrote is a nonprofit is seeking to develop a compelling ask from donors. This is information about the nonprofit. You see where I put my little quotes, and all I did was I grabbed everything that Rhonda told me about Maconite. And I don't have anything else. And then see my end quote. And then I said, please develop a compelling ask for donations. And let's just see what ChatGPT says.
Wow, this is amazing stuff.
It's good stuff. And so awesome sauce. So a couple of things we're going to point out here, Rhonda, is I want you to look at the very bottom of my screen. Let me just make this really big. I want you to look at the very bottom of my screen. It says ChatGPT may produce inaccurate information about people, places, or facts. Okay. Then I want you to look here. Note, this is a template. Modify the details, quotes, and everything else. Give it your own voice. And so one of the things I want to share with everybody who uses ChatGPT, some people will come in here and say, develop a compelling ask for education, and you'll get random stuff. But if the better your prompt, the better your response. Okay. So we put in everything that she wrote about her organization. And then ChatGPT came back and said, here's a title for her ask, empowering today for a brighter tomorrow. And then, dear whoever you want to send this to, imagine a world where every individual, irrespective of their background or circumstances, is endowed with the tools and resources to thrive. I don't care if you don't keep anything else. You've got to keep that first sentence. They nailed that one, didn't they? A place where communities are educated. So I probably wouldn't keep everything. I'd look to see what I wanted, but why your support matters. So it took everything that you said you were doing, and then it went and broke it down. Every dollar is invested can catalyze change, create rippling effect. You probably want to go in there and put in what the dollars will be used for. That's just what I would probably do for education. By supporting our initiatives, I would say which are, and then I would, go into that. So each child, teenager, adult we educate becomes a beacon of knowledge. If it's not true for you, you've got to adjust it, right? Health and wellness, a thriving community is a healthy one. Your generous contribution will enable us to do XYZ, workforce development. And then as you put in your name, once said, the strength of our society lies in the ability to uplift. You didn't actually say that, but you could say you said it. And so anyway, so listen, this is the greater point. This is a nice ask, but Rhonda, as a person that does this literally every single day, I wouldn't actually send this ask to a person. Instead, I would pick one, right? I would focus on where I want to be, and I would merge the ones that make the most sense to be merged. So workforce development and economic community, maybe I merge those two, but you've got such vastly different things that a person who might want to support you might get confused in where they could be most beneficial to you. So I would say try it out. I would take whatever you want to go after funding for first. If it's economic and community development, that's what I would say why your support matters. And I would focus on that so that you can get people around that. Because what it feels like, and this is just my feedback to you, it feels like you're kind of in many different places and trying to figure out where your true niche is. And I don't know that to be true. I haven't actually met you face to face, but that's what it feels like. That's what it feels like to me. So what I'm going to do with Gary's permission is, Rhonda, if you would like to reach out to me, how about you and me work on this together? That'll be my gift to you, because I'm feeling like I can lend some support of making this work a little bit better for you. And I'm happy to do it. Would that be okay, Gary? I've not done that before.
Absolutely.
With our
Fantastic.
audience. Yeah, but I want to do that for her because I'm feeling like health, and we got some great bones, but I think we have too many things going on where a funder could get confused. And so I want to make sure that we can do some clarifying things. Rhonda, if that will be acceptable to you, please reach out to me, and csmith@dewlyn.com, and let's get on a calendar so that we can work this out.
We are past time, but we got a couple more questions real quick. Rhonda, thank you for that. That was great. Kelly, again, what about the online grants that require a nominal fee? Tips for determining which grants are legit?
Yeah. So there's I don't know of a grant in the nonprofit world that makes you pay a fee to apply. I do know that there is a for-profit grant. I can't think of the name of it right now, that makes you pay $15. They are legit. They pull all the $15 from all people that ever applied, and they literally will offer grants. But in the nonprofit arena, private foundations don't ask you to apply, to pay them to apply. So if it's a private foundation and they're saying they're private foundation, they're asking you to pay, I've never in my history heard of that before. I probably would not do that.
Great. Okay. Trying to get these other ones. Linda says, when I filed my paperwork, I accidentally identified my nonprofit as a private foundation instead of a public charity. My state says I have to pay $500 to change my status. Any suggestions? I would say move to another state, but
it's really not. Yeah, it's the IRS. I think it's a checkout. You can go to the IRS. It's like it's 4556. It's one of those 4500 level forms. You are going to have to change that over with the IRS if you've gotten as far as the IRS.
Your email address is csmith@dewlyn.org.
Yes, it is. csmith@dewlyn.com. Yep, .com. And it's on our last, it's on our last slide, but I'm putting it in the chat.
Okay. And I got one more here from Sophia. Can you transition from a 501c3 to an L3C?
From a 501c3 to what's an L3C? Limited liability.
That's I'm not familiar with that. Sophia, can you elucidate? You want me to? I can give you. Let me see if I can give you a voice real quick. Hold on. Sophia, I've allowed you to talk. Can you talk? Can you
Yes.
get this?
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi,
Yep.
Sophia.
Hi. Yes, so just kind of curious, right, I'm learning about the L3C, low profit limited liability company.
Oh, the low
Yes.
profit. Okay.
Thank you.
So you're wondering, can you transition to a low profit?
Yes, I'm just curious about it. I'm just
Okay.
kind of, yeah.
May I ask, why would you want to do that? Low profit doesn't offer you tax exemption.
I thought that it does both. You can be for profit. Oh, it doesn't. Okay.
No,
Okay.
it doesn't. That's a misconception. The L3, sorry, you said L3, but low profit, it does not offer tax exemption. And so I've had people who prefer to go that route, a lot less paperwork, red tape, but it doesn't give you the benefits of the nonprofit period. It doesn't, not the 501c3, not at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. That helps.
You're welcome.
That helps. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I just answered a question about the site, about where to get to the Chat GPT. And Betty Blackman, since you've done this, Can we get the result of the final ask for Rhonda when it's completed?
That's up to Rhonda. I'll leave that to her.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Rhonda, if you will share that with us when you get it, then we will share it with everybody who is here. How about that? Well, folks, this has been fantastic. You guys have asked amazing questions. Thank you all very much for attending. Cheryl, you're wonderful as always. We will see you back here. Your next time is October 17th. I know you don't regret things you say very often, but you said you do webinars on AI, and you're going to regret that because you and I are going to talk.
All right, we can talk.
Well, thank you, everyone. And we will be back on September 27th to talk about TikTok. And then our first one in October, which I failed to mention in the introduction, is about angel investing. So all about angel investing on October 3rd by a great SCORE volunteer and colleague of ours in Florida. Her name is Patricia Loftus. She is on the SCORE board, and she is an angel investor. So if you want to find out more about angel investing, make sure you sign up for that too. So thank you, everyone. Cheryl, thank you. We'll get your slides. We're going to send them out to everybody with the recording.
You got it. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a great day.